come once again to discuss things.
Okay, I've got like 3 different things recording. This is going to get harder and harder to keep track of as we go. So, why not just go ahead and get started? Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Maybe you'll actually get to hear this one. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is that Matt Kid and that beta male cuck, Connor Nielsen.
Hey people.
I thought that was Rasco.
No, Connor's the true beta male cuck. Rasco's like, uses beta male cuck like the word nigga. You know, he just like, he's taken it back. But Connor's the true beta male cuck.
Rasco's too, like, legit, straight up alpha, bruh.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Connor, do you even lift, bro?
I used to.
Yeah, you skipped leg day, I bet. Anyway, today we're here to talk about a particularly geeky topic, because this is, like, so niche. Today we're talking about a topic Steve suggested, but unfortunately could not be here for, because the world is against Geeky Gentlemen, the world conspires against us, and his power is out. Today we are talking about journalism on comics. No, that does not mean we are talking about the journalistic ethics of Lois Lane, though that is an entirely different and possibly more interesting conversation. Or, for that matter, the journalistic ethics of Superman, who does things and then reports on himself. Could you imagine any other reporter doing this? That'd be a huge ethical fiasco. No. Today we're here to talk about things like websites that publish spoilers on comics, or comics rumors, or things related to comic book films, or what have you. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. But before we get into all that, I want you, the listeners, to know you can download episodes of Geeky Gentlemen. There's a link in the description to download this episode. You can download older episodes by request. Just leave a comment, on old episodes, and it'll be uploaded to the downloading website for your listening pleasure. As far as how to find old episodes, well, there's a Geeky Gentleman playlist. Go check that out. Anyways, who wants to start us off? Where's a good starting point on this?
I'd like to start, if I may.
Go for it.
So I take issue, and the reason I want to start is because this was the first thing that popped into my head, so I know I have something to say. I take issue when comic book, it's not so much websites that are dedicated to posting about comic books, like, you know, comic book resources and like comicbook.com and stuff like that, but it's when, like, mainstream media grabs a hold of something, let's say it's the Captain America Hydra thing, and they report on it totally out of context, or the whole Superman renouncing his American citizenship thing.
Oh,
like,
my God, yes, I was just about to say that.
The Captain America Hydra thing, if you actually read that comic, you know that it has to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read that comic, but it has to do with the Cosmic Cube altering his memories and altering what he perceived as his past. And
okay, here's the thing with that.
Okay, well, I mean, okay.
No, I've been reviewing this on my show, and this book started out really good and then has gone nowhere but down. I'm not sure if that's what happened. I thought it was, but that was totally sold as that's what happened, that the Cosmic Cube altered his memory. They even explained that's what happened, as the Cosmic Cube altered his memory. But in the most recent issue, which just came out Wednesday, Red Skull, like, says directly to him, I made the Cosmic Cube alter your memory, and blah blah blah, and Steve Rogers goes, no you didn't, I've always believed this. I'm like, wait, what? And so, I don't know, maybe the outrage was deserved. I don't know what the fuck Nick Spencer's doing anymore in that book. But yes, it was annoying that media outlets reported on it at the time, because it was completely ridiculous to report on it at the time.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that where I'm like, you don't know what the writer has planned for that idea, and because of all this outrage, there's a potential where, like, there could be so much outrage that, you know, maybe the book gets canceled or something like that. So maybe you don't actually get to see the idea that the writer has, because this, like, sort of clickbaity, and that's a whole thing too, this sort of clickbaity reporting gets people all up in arms over something that hasn't even been fully fleshed out yet. And I mean, the American citizenship thing, correct me if I'm wrong again, but that was kind of a backup story, sort of an almost what-if story, if I remember correctly.
No, that was just like a one-shot in a Superman annual or something like that.
Okay,
And
okay,
it was written by Goyer, and there's your first problem, but it was just a quick little one-shot backup, and honestly, he gives up his American citizenship, Superman gives up his American citizenship because he doesn't want his actions to be seen as America's position on issues around the world. Which, I don't know, that's probably a good thing. I don't know, I thought that was the strangest thing ever, but it got reported as, oh, well, this is DC saying that they don't love America anymore. I'm like, wait, how do you even get one from the other? How?
It's like they just see a panel and don't even read the actual, like, 5-page backup.
Right.
That's the thing that gets me when the major media outlets report on it, is it's this expectation that comics remain completely isolated and nothing ever changes the status quo. And while on some level that is fundamentally true, we still have status quo change-ups. We still have these little moments where things change, at least for a time. But if you change too much, oh, then that's not okay. Well, fucking, you're not reading the books. Why do you care? Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly.
Superman gave up his American citizenship. DC can burn in hell. They're not going to get any of my money. Well, they weren't fucking getting your money in the first place. This is the first time you've talked about them in how many years? What the fuck? If you're not reading the book, you have very little room to criticize it.
Yeah, and that's my biggest, that's probably my biggest grievance is when the mainstream media, and I mean, like, niche, like, CBR and, like, comicbook.com and, like, other places that I can't think of off the top of my head, they have their own sins that they all commit every now and then, of course, but when mainstream media grabs a hold of some weird plot element or some out-of-context character or motivation or decision and then just runs with it, like, oh, that gets on my nerves, because, like, you're not even getting, in some cases, you're not even giving it its due time to see where the story goes, and then in other cases, you're not really contextualizing it within the story that they're trying to tell. God, and that bothers me. I don't like it. I don't care for it.
And
so
that happened as well with the Action Comics, New 52 Action Comics run a year or so ago.
The Morrison run?
No,
like
not the Morrison run, the Pack run, where there was a really famous panel of Superman standing between a group of police and a group of protesters in the fallout of all the Ferguson stuff. And that was very clearly a political statement and stuff, but there was more context to the story itself than just the political statement at the time. And they don't care to report on that side of the thing. It's like they just want a quick story. They don't feel like reading it. And that's a problem.
So that's a little jumping on point that I'd like to get on in here with, because the first time I'd ever seen like mainstream media reporting on comics, and it's always negative, right? It's never, oh, this is a cool thing that happened in a comic book. It's always, oh my god, this is bad. Say no comics. But I started reading comics with the New 52. I know I'm like one of the two people that did that. But I remember seeing, like, it was 4 or 5 or 6 months after the New 52 started, and when the New 52 hit stands, there was like Catwoman and Red Hood and the Outlaws, and a lot of like controversy over sexualizing female characters, and really ramping up a lot of the 90s-ness.
No,
the
you
DC
don't
universe.
understand it. Batman getting his nipples rubbed by Catwoman is a huge character moment. Why doesn't anyone get that? Sorry. son. I need to take.
But it was somebody had shared somebody had I think shared something to me over Facebook or something where it was Fox News reporting on this 6 months after the New 52 already hit stands. And I'm thinking, why are they reporting on this now? And I looked at it, and it was within a couple of days, so it wasn't these just hit the stands, and then they're going around and showing it to parents, and those parents are like, yep, those people are having sex in that comic. I wouldn't let my little Timmy read these comics. It's they're rated T, first of all, or T+. They're not really for little Timmy. These are, and there was a whole stuff with Dan DiDio coming out saying that their target was 45-year-old fans or something.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And so it's they're not going to report on that sort of stuff. It's to me, it's sort of getting mad at the Oscars for only nominating white actors and getting mad at the Oscars, not getting mad at the systems, the studio system that kind of creates this environment. It's a very similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not mad at. We're only attacking the surface and getting mad at the tree for having a bad tasting apple instead of getting mad at the farmer who planted the tree wrong. It's driving me crazy with that sort of stuff. The other thing was I saw another thing of Fox News reporting on Sam Wilson, Captain America. What was the big controversy with that?
He was protecting border crossers.
Yeah, and so I saw some people on Fox News getting angry at that, and it's context is a very important thing. It's we've already talked about this, but especially in comics where continuity is so steeped up and all that stuff. And I don't understand why we need to have they're almost like fluff pieces, but they're and so they're given the attention of a fluff piece. They're only attacking the surface, and it's only attacked. It's never, like I said, it's never. This is a good thing that happened in a comic. It's always, this is bad.
You know what, though? I really, really, really want to read or see the news story where it's just a reporter talking about a cool thing that happened in a comic recently. There's nothing, controversial about it at all. It's just this week in Green Lantern Star Trek, there was this really cool variant cover. It's, got Captain Kirk in a Green Lantern uniform. It's neat. I want to see that story on the news.
Well, I mean, okay, remember, back when Multiversity came out and no one was reading it?
Mm-hmm.
What if...
But that was people saving the universe then, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, obviously. But, when you get to that second issue and it talks about how, we as readers and consumers of art we are creating pain against people. We're kind of responsible for fictional people's pain. And so now people those superheroes are going to fight against us in the cliffhanger of Multiversity. Nobody's going to write a piece about how art and the reader have this all now the Grant Morrison's trying to create this conflict between the narrative characters and the people reading it. No one's going to write about that and how that's an interesting idea and a progression in comic books. We're just going to talk about there was cleavage in here. Little Timmy shouldn't read this. So I don't get why we treat comics like they're still for kids.
I mean, it's the same reason that in general you don't see animation taken as super seriously. I think that in the public eye, there's this weird thing where comic book movies and superhero movies are the big thing that everyone goes to see and loves. But the comic books themselves are still kind of viewed as this thing that are for kids and for nerds, I guess. And so when they do something controversial, it's suddenly a huge deal because it's almost like a TV show, meant for kids doing something controversial, at least in their eyes. And I want to hope that we've been moving past this, but it doesn't always seem like that.
Well, for me, I always think that I will say this, and I've had people disagree with me, but I often hear people say things like, well, just keep your politics out of my comics. And I don't understand that perspective at all, because to me, comics are one of the most political mediums because of how current they are. Not always.
Yeah. They've always been.
Yeah, not always are they necessarily political. They're not inherently political, but politics is a big part of comics. If you go all the way back to the 40s, when they're really in the golden age and stuff, Superman is literally a social justice warrior. He is like throwing landlords off buildings and stuff. He is very much a protector of the social class. You get to the 60s and 70s with Green Lantern and Green Arrow. That was one of the most political books ever. They dealt with all kinds of issues, race, drug use, all these things. And so, I don't understand why we're still doing stories about comics stirring the pot as if comics stirring the pot is something new.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean,
there's this thing that Kelly Sue once told me, the Kelly Sue DeConnick, the comic book writer. She said that comics are among the most efficient forms of art because you can make a 20-page comic and put it out in like 20 days if you really get things done and like get it well publicized. You can put it out in 20 days. Films take years to make. An album, like a musical album, you can try to put like an entire album out in 20 days, but you need to have it produced, you need to write the music, you need to get it all done, and it's a long process. Comics are one of the fastest things to do, and that's why you say they're current.
Well, like to that point, and sometimes they're even ahead of things. To that point, one of the good issues of Nick Spencer's run on Captain America was in the Sam Wilson book, where you had the character Rage in a standoff with this private police force, and he has this really, really big monologue. But in it, he says, I'm all for taking down criminals, but when you're beating guys to death and throwing them in jail over some bootleg DVDs, then we've got a problem, and I think there's something more going on here. And that issue came out literally the day after the big controversy over the guy that was selling bootleg DVDs in front of a liquor store. Got shot in the back of the head by police. That came out literally the day after. That happened on Tuesday night. It came out Wednesday morning. So,
wow.
Nick Spencer had no way to know that happened, but he just wrote a situation in his head for a character to say, and then literally the day before his issue comes out, that occurred. And so, you can be that...
And that's also the sign of a writer having a good sense of their finger on the pulse and kind of getting what's happening. They can predict something like that.
Yeah, and it's terribly sad that I don't know what the fuck he's doing with that book anymore. But that you can be that current, that on the moment is really, really indicative. The only thing I know of that's an entertainment, artistic thing that is not just straight up news and is that current is South Park. South Park did that whole documentary of 6 days to air, and that's why, they make an episode the week before it goes up, or literally till the day it's about to go up. So they are more current than comics, but I don't, I'd rather read a comic than watch an episode of South Park. They're one of the only things that's as current. So, again, I have no problem with media reporting on these things that happen in comics, but why do they act like it's such a big deal when it happens? Why is Sam Wilson's replacement Falcon being an illegal immigrant a big deal? I don't get that. Why is that such a big controversial thing that it happened?
I wonder if it's because...
I think in the case of that, it's a little bit more current because I don't think we've really dealt with illegal immigration and becoming superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Have we really dealt with that in a big book like Captain America?
No, and that's why one of the things that book did that I really liked. And what's even funnier about it is, damn kid kind of doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's just an angry youth. At one point, Sam asks him, before we get into this whole hubbub, we need to actually check on your status. What's going on with you? He's like, oh, I'm one of those dreamers. You don't sound too sure about that. It's just a panel of him shrugging. That was really funny to me. But that whole area, that book was doing some really great things. They did an issue with Stilt Woman and how she appeared in essentially revenge porn. But because it's comics, she didn't actually do it. There was like this whole subplot with Misty Knight, or not, the whole issue was the plot. But there's this whole one-off issue with Misty Knight investigating this ring of revenge porn related to female superheroes and supervillains, and she found out it was like life model decoys and all this thing. So it was a very comic book thing, but it dealt with a very real issue. And nothing got reported on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing because, so like right now, Benjamin Piercy, he's got his Green Arrow book, and one of the, I'm a few issues behind on it, but one of the story arcs they just did was about a rogue group of cops who act like a private militia and like mow down people. Like, it's pretty messed up, but because it's happening in a Green Arrow book and not like a Captain America book, no one cares. And I don't mean no one cares as in like people like us care, because like if you're a lot of comic book fans are reading it and enjoying it, but I mean the mainstream media, they don't care, because who cares about Green Arrow?
Yep.
I mean even Arrow fans don't care about Green Arrow. I mean like so it's one of those
things. And there's
things.
also that thing of it's like you'd say maybe the Green Arrow's had a little bit of mainstream success with the show Arrow, but even then it's called Arrow, and people will look for a comic book called Arrow. They won't necessarily look to Green Arrow. They see it as more of a detached thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there are books like Green Arrow, and Green Arrow is still pretty big when you consider like the pantheon of characters to have comic books about. And so like when a character who is honestly as well known as Green Arrow is doing this kind of controversial police brutality story that's very, on the nose with today's society, and no one gets noticed, it makes you wonder, like you were talking about, books that are even more obscure than Green Arrow that are doing probably even more, like,
Renato Jones, the 1%.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me tell you about Renato Jones, the 1%. Warren Ellis calls that book "The Punisher for the Occupy Generation." Let me talk about Renato Jones, because I love that book. There's an issue where a guy has a cell phone company, and his phones are programmed to become completely useless by the time a new phone comes out. His cell phone company is called Plum Industries. So subtlety. He is also drawn as bald, glasses, and wearing a turtleneck. So subtlety.
Gosh.
And so Renato Jones goes and murders the fuck out of him. Because subtlety. I can't tell you if that book is good, because it is so to my taste. Anyway.
Wow.
But yeah, like that book... that book is meant to be controversial. It is meant to be ugly and in your face and like just very, very apparent. It ends with the main villain of the book announcing his candidacy for president. So subtlety.
There was
Comics are an art form known for their subtlety.
There was I don't know if you've ever read The Authority. God, there's an issue, and my fiance brought this to my attention because she and I are starting to become bigger fans of Midnighter and Apollo. So there's an issue of The Authority where Midnighter and Apollo, they're basically Batman and Superman, but they're in Wildstorm continuity, and they're a gay couple, and they're fantastic. But there's kind of this trope where Apollo, even though he has godlike superpowers, is always the one who's in trouble, and Midnighter, who's basically, I like to compare him to Shadow the Hedgehog, but Midnighter, who's Batman Wolverine, has to always save him, because he's like a normal dude, but he's got like a combat computer in his brain. There's an issue. Midnighter finds out that Apollo has been like raped by this guy. So what does Midnighter do? He beats the dude to a pulp and then sodomizes him with a jackhammer.
Yep.
Like, that's insane. And it's ridiculous and it's crazy. Did it get reported on as the most controversial thing ever? No, probably not, but Superman renouncing his American citizenship and like an annual did for whatever reason.
Yeah, and so
so
it's this like idea that people, I think the reason that the mainstream media reports on these things is because these are iconic characters, and so it's this idea that they still have ownership of them even though they don't do anything to support them. That's the real problem. But I want to take some time and transition to things that are dedicated to news on comics, because I feel
I'm glad you're doing that.
That's an interesting area of conversation too. Okay, so I think the best place to start here is not to focus on comic movie news, because that's a whole other thing, and we'll get into that too, but to focus on the thing I hate and why I don't follow any comic news websites. And that is spoiling the story before the story comes out. Cannot stand that shit.
Yes.
Like,
do you remember
just a couple months ago with DC Rebirth starting up, they spoiled Dr. Manhattan and the whole Watchmen thing, which still it's not a twist I'm a fan of, but I would have enjoyed to find that out on my own by reading the comic. Why couldn't it wait? And it's not like they put spoilers, they put that Watchmen will be in the DC Rebirth continuity in big ass bold letters for no reason.
So that's actually something that I didn't know before somebody spoiled that for me, because the only website that I even go to for any sort of comic book news every once in a while is the IGN Comics tab, which used to be that's how I kind of got into comic book reviews and stuff. I don't really do much on it anymore, but I remember it said spoilers for DC Rebirth annual or issue the DC Universe Rebirth #1 hits the web, and I was like, I'm not going to click on that. And then the day before that thing came out, somebody sent something to me over Facebook, which was Batman holding the comedian pin. I was like, I was just about to read that. Come on. And it was infuriating. And then I can't imagine being a person that has to work for a comic book news site, because everything gets spoiled, as you said. Anything major gets spoiled anyways. Because do you remember back when Jeff Johns was doing Justice League, the first 2 years or so of his run were leading up to this big event called Trinity War. It's going to be Trinity War. We're going to have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, that Justice League going up against the Justice League of America, which at that time was Steve Trevor and Hawkman and Vibe and a bunch of B-list characters. And it's also going to be Justice League Dark, which at the time was Constantine, and then a bunch of other kind of more supernatural characters. And all three of these teams were going to fight, and it's going to be this thing called Trinity War. I'm like, okay, it's coming out summer of whenever. And then the day, or the week, no, but I think it was the day before Trinity War hit stand, the first issue of Trinity War hit stand, they made a preview for Forever Evil. And they said, basically it was Jeff Johns narrating, so this is what happens in Trinity War, and at the end, the crime syndicate is going to be revealed to be behind it all, and they're going to plunge the world into darkness, and then we're going to have this real event called Forever Evil. I'm like, are you kidding me? 2 years of build-up for this thing called Trinity War, but that's just the prelude to Forever Evil.
Yeah, that's Jeff Johns' weakest point as a storyteller. He does not know how to end a story. He just builds into himself forever and ever, and it gets really annoying, and it makes all the endings really emotionally hollow. But yeah, the fact that things spoil that it makes it even worse, right? The fact that these news sites will spoil things before anyone has the chance to. It's not like posting movie spoilers the day after the movie comes out, because at least then you've conceivably had a chance to go see it. It's posting spoilers before you have any opportunity to, consume the thing. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. The one other thing that drives me crazy is that they'll have an interview with a writer, and the thing that drove me nuts was they would interview Scott Snyder every month after every issue came out of his Batman run. And I don't understand the point of that, because they get their review copies like a day or two early, right? And then they'll interview the writer, and they'll be talking about spoilers for a book that you have not had any chance to conceivably purchase yet. But then, because the news cycle is so fast, and that story will get buried, like after you've read the book, you've forgotten that they did an interview with Scott Snyder or Jeff Johns or Tom King or what have you. So then that interview is kind of pointless. So I don't understand why why it's so counterintuitive to like interview people and then post that interview to the web like before the issue that you're talking about has even come out.
I would be very curious to know how, because like if you look at like the games industry and the movie industry, you know, if you're a well-known enough critic to get your material ahead of time, there's always this embargo date. You know, you have your thing to review, but you can't post your review or post any information about it until this certain date, be it a week before release, a couple days before release, or if their game, they have no faith in it, they'll make the embargo date the day of release. And so I'm kind of curious as to how that process works with comics, because I know very little about that side of comic book journalism, about how that works, because as you said earlier, comics are put out so quickly. Would there even really be a need for that kind of thing? Because comic reviewing is a little bit more niche than, you know, film and video game reviewing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's kind of, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I would be kind of curious to know how that sort of the businessy end of comic book journalism works, as far as how much of it, because I mean, they always put out these previews and these interviews because they are trying to promote the book. Obviously, they're trying to get people psyched up for it. And I don't mind previews getting put out, you know, if it's a page or two of the thing that comes out in a couple of days. Like, I generally don't mind that. But I also do try to avoid major spoilers when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are no embargoes, as far as I'm concerned, regarding comics, because it is all about the press and stuff. But the comic book journalism side of things is far more reactionary than any other form of journalism I've seen. It's always just kind of reporting on stuff that DC or Marvel or Image or whatever is putting in front of them and then reporting on it. There's not a lot of exploration of what's going down in the industry. And I think that when you get down to it, there's a lot of shady stuff that Marvel and DC do to their creative team in terms of, like, when the standard used to be it's 22 pages for a comic book. And then pretty much it just sort of like the standard changed several years ago to where now it's only 20 pages for a comic book. And essentially everyone in the comic book industry just took a pay cut. Because now you're getting paid for less pages, because that's the way you're paid. You're paid by the page when it comes to comics. So also, I think it was like an issue of Batman, I think it's 0 Year in the final issue, there's like 2 full pages of black. And they're not ad pages, they're story pages, 2 full pages of black. Now, I certainly hope Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Danny McKee, and FCO Placencia did not get a single cent for those pages. Because while I think it totally works for that story, 0 Year I think is a masterful story that I absolutely love. But if we're going to look at the business side of things, they should not get paid for 2 pages of darkness.
I can't remember the name of the guy. Ah, shit, what's his name? Fuck! Guy did a Nick Fury run back in the 70s, and he made it like...
Steranko?
Might be him. I don't know. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Jim Steranko.
Okay, Connor. We get it. Your dick is bigger than mine. Congratulations.
Oh my god.
Anyway, like he did this sequence of 6 pages with no dialogue of Nick Fury breaking into S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters or some kind of break-in, and it's like this supposed to be completely silent scene, no dialogue, no nothing. And he turns in the pages, and his editor at the time says, "I can't pay you for these because there's no story." And he's like, "Bullshit!" And so I'd be curious to hear him respond to your point about this scene of black totally works for the story, but I hope they didn't get paid for it, because I'm pretty sure he would tell you, bullshit.
Yeah, but there's a different... yeah, I mean, I get that's mostly facetious and a joke, but, like, you got to look at... There's not really any effort put into those pages. It's just, you can just go into Google Paint or Microsoft Paint and then just fill black.
And see, if it were me, the hilarious thing is, whenever I do, like, visual art stuff with, like, CG or whatever, I put ridiculous amounts of detail into scenes, even though I know things I'm going to do later will cover up those details, just because I care that much. So what I sincerely hope is they actually wrote, or like they actually had fucking Greg Capullo draw out a whole scene and then cover it in black so that you can't see any of it.
That'd be hilarious.
That would be amazing.
Gosh.
I doubt they'd do it, but that would be amazing.
Can I will say, one thing that does kind of irk me, and this is true of, like, all media reporting, you see it in movies and video games too, this constant desire to use your platform to continue cashing in on, like, for example, I just saw it was either a CBR, like, Comic Resources article, or it was just a comic.com article, where it was like, top 15 moments from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run. And so it's this constant, like, we go back and we'll, like, rehash this old material to get this, like, top 10 or top 15 list out of it, so that way we can keep getting clicks and keep getting money, as opposed to what could be potentially more interesting, which is writing, you know, those think piece type articles, which you're really only going to find on sites like, you know, like the Mary Sue, that are kind of created with not necessarily an agenda, but they have a certain lens that they're viewing their material through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that does get to the wider thing. Like, why bother to do actual reporting on what's going on behind the scenes on this comic, or what the deal making was to get this team together? Why bother to do any of that? Why bother to look into the way that DC interfered with, you know, Grant Morrison's run? Why bother looking into any of that? Let's just do an article talking about the top 10 books of the week or whatever. It's
right,
like,
exactly. And when you go back to, like, when Gail Simone got kicked off New 52 Batgirl, like, a lot of writers were upset. Like, a lot of her peers were, like, super ticked, and they were displaying their outrage, like, publicly on Twitter and shit. But as far as I'm aware, and I wasn't following comics as hardcore back then, but as far as I'm aware, you know, there weren't those sort of, like, I don't want to say expose, but there wasn't a lot of, like, real digging journalism to kind of get to the bottom of crap like this. And that's the kind of stuff that I think the comic book industry's journalism side kind of needs to get to feel more legitimate, to feel more like it's, to feel more necessary to the industry itself, as opposed to just a thing that tells you what the solicitations are and gives you some cool top tens to read. Like, I would love for the comic book journalism world to feel necessary. Mm-hmm. And I think you get the same complaints lobbed at the game industry when you look at places like IGN and compare them to something like Giant Bomb, which a lot of people view as a much more valid look into the games industry. So I feel like the comics industry has a similar issue.
You know, I think that this isn't just solely on comic journalism. I think this is journalism across the board. I think the problem with journalism across the board, as someone that worked with up-and-coming journalists at my last job, is reporters don't understand how to report anymore. We spend so much time focusing on facts and structure, but we don't really teach people to report. Like what kinds of questions to ask and stuff. What was it? Okay, the term officer-involved shooting. No matter where you stand on the politics of this issue, is a complete garbage term from a journalistic standpoint. Because one, it is police jargon. Two, it is vague as fuck. It is literally the same as saying dog-involved bite. And three, it is misleading. Because it leads you to believe that the officer was the one, could have been the one that got shot. So there's like all these problems with it from a journalistic standpoint. You are supposed to be direct and to the point and not use jargon. There are all these problems wrong with it from a journalistic standpoint. Yet, when I was at the station, one of the reporters used the term in her story, and I said to her, yeah, you shouldn't use that term, and I explained why, and she's like, well, that's what they said. So that's what I'm putting in my story. You can say it if it's in a direct quote, but if you're describing the story, if you're describing the event, you should say what actually happened. And she's like, well, then you do the story. I'm not the reporter. I'm trying to help you be a better journalist. Well, I'm not having this conversation. We don't train people to think. We train them to perform. This is a problem. So when we get to a lesser issue like comics, we don't train people to actually go do real journalism. We train them to do fluff pieces and to do things that will get views because this is what people are interested in. Never thinking, maybe we should show people the stuff that they don't know whether or not they're going to be interested in it. Maybe that's more valuable.
I agree. The thing is, I heard like in a podcast with like some entertainment journalists, they were saying that they get paid by the click, and so that's where top 10 lists come in handy. That's where solicitations come in handy. That's where all the fluff pieces come in handy, because if it's an attractive headline, people click on it. Mm-hmm. And I guess this is where we can get into like clickbaity stuff. But no one cares about like who's getting like nobody cares about, you know, everyone in the industry getting a pay cut when the standard goes from 22 pages to 20 pages a comic. And now that also does kind of blur the line between like disclosing people's wages and I don't think many people want their wage and how much they're getting paid to be disclosed over a journalist piece. But at the same time, if we're training people to not be interested in like things that could possibly impact somebody's like lifestyle, then that's important. That that's bad. We have to like at least have some kind of awareness on how journalism and like just turning a blind eye to bad business dealings does hurt people.
Mm-hmm. Very
and
much.
It's weird to me that, and I don't mean to keep bringing it back to this. I just know I know this industry more than I know the comic books industry off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But like you look at the realm of video game criticism, and you see the amateur critics, your people on YouTube who are actually far more critical than the people whose job it is to be critics. IGN will put out an article or a video saying like 7 reasons to get pumped for this game that hasn't come out, whereas someone like Total Biscuit will say like, you know, let's look at this skeptically, critically, let's not support developers who are doing shady stuff. And so I'm wondering, because you guys, I mean, I follow comics, but probably not as much as you guys do. And so I'm kind of wondering if there's a similar sort of thing where you have a bunch of technically amateur people who follow comics who are way more invested in bringing these sort of things to the light, you know, like you were talking about, like with the page, like with the page cuts and stuff like that. Whereas the places that are professional comic journalism sites are just interested in putting out top 10 lists and kind of clickbaity fluff pieces. And I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with a good, fun top 10 list, but there has to be room for both. So it's weird that the sort of amateur journalists are potentially having more journalistic integrity than the ones who do it for a living.
Well, that's the thing, is there are people who do like reporting on what's going on in the industry more than just this book's coming out. But the problem is they are often more entertainers. So you're getting more real journalism from those people. But the problem is it's very much colored by like a internet podcast or a web series or something. It's very much colored by the entertainment side of things. So it's not truly acceptable journalism. They don't do the legwork to show their sources all the time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so you have the journalists who are like, oh yeah, I went and did this interview with Scott Snyder, and it's like, well, great, but can you actually look into other things that are going on? Can you tell us what the hell's happening with this book? Why this is getting canceled? Is it just because sales, or is it because of other stuff going on in it? Like, why is, you know, the big thing in the industry right now, the big story that I can't find any good articles on, is Marvel deciding, you know, this whole diversity thing, it's not good for business. What the fuck was that?
Oh my gosh, that whole... I've seen so many people ripping on that article where Marvel's just like, oh, the reason we're not doing so hot is because people are just tired of diversity. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous.
It is. It's not like the fact that they're doing politics or they're doing more diverse characters. It's the fact that they're doing it poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also, they're oversaturating. They have way too many, like, comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Coming out on a monthly basis.
I agree. It's just...
They have, yeah.
So you got, like, I can't find anyone to do more legwork on that. Like, all you see is the interview where they say that. You don't see reaction from readers. You don't see reaction from, comic shop owners. I don't know where that is. That's basic legwork journalism.
Yeah.
We also need to have more journalism about the readers, and especially retailers and online, online readers and retailers, because that's where the money comes from. The industry is set up in such a way that the retailers are king. That's where all the money comes from, is through the retailers, and so we need to so comic shops are getting closed down at a rapid pace, even though superheroes are the big thing in popular entertainment as far as film goes. So I want to see us talking about this sort of stuff and approaching people who own comic shops and how it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep their stores open, talking about how price increases on some $2.99 to $3.99, and how $5 or $10 comics for specials that someone might want to buy. And we need to have people talking about how that affects business stores and owners, and how readers are turned off by the prices if they don't know they're going to like something. This is all stuff that needs to be covered, but we don't do it. And going back to your point, Matt, about the people who have to get there early, or like the big video game people that put out looks like 7 reasons why you need to buy this game, and how amateur reviewers are the ones that are really being critical. I think the big people that are in bed with the Marvel and DC and the comic book industry, they want to be liked because they want to get invited back to the party. That's how they make their money. If you notice, the lowest grade, if you look up IGN reviewing anything, the lowest grade they give stuff is like a 6. Everything's between a 6 and a 10. And it's absurd that every once in a blue moon you'll get a 4, and that's as low as they seem to go. It's like a 4.5. Did you not read Scott Lobdell's Superman run? Those were 1s and 2s all the way through. It was one of the worst comic book runs I've ever read. And the lowest grade they gave that book was a 5. And the person who was reviewing that series, Benjamin Bailey, who I really like a lot as a podcaster, he would talk on his podcast that he hated that book, and he would just labor through every issue, but he always gave him 5s. And that's the thing, is while those reviews might be just ripping that book a new one, the scores that are attached to them, they know that people scroll past the review and then just look at the score, and they want that score to not be as bad as it really is. And I don't know how much control the writers have over that score. Maybe it's the editors that have control over the score, but that's a very important thing that needs to be addressed in just even basic reviewing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's that's why so many people flock to sites like Giant Bomb, because that site was started by a games critic named Jeff Gersman after he used to be an editor for GameSpot, and he gave Kane and Lynch 2 a really bad review. He was
because
this game
it's a
sucks.
really bad game.
Yes, it is. But Kane Lynch 2 was Eidos, who made that game, had that game being advertised on GameSpot's website. So Jeff Gersman comes in, just speaks truth, and is like, no, this game's terrible, this is bad, don't spend your money on this game. He gets fired. And so then he goes and starts Giant Bomb, and that's why literally everyone loves that site, because it's literally founded on
spite.
Fucking journal. Yeah, it's founded on spite and actual journalistic integrity. And so as far as I'm aware, because again, I like you, Connor, I half started following comics in New 52, and I have a decent chunk of New 52 comics. I haven't really been following current, to be honest, until Rebirth, and most of my comics are trades and graphic novels. So following current comics and following the world of current comics journalism is still a little new to me. So, I mean, I don't know if there is a site like Giant Bomb that's like this fucking hardcore journalistic integrity awesome site for comics, because if there is, I would love to find it.
You can find some stuff here and there. Like it's weird. There's no go-to. There's no like reputable source consistently. You just kind of like Mary Sue's. I think the only one that's like ever willing to get some blood on its hands. But
yeah, I like Mary Sue.
Yeah, but even then, it's like very, very politicized. It's kind of like watching MSNBC. What you're saying is more true than your alternative, but at the same time, this is very colored. This is very clear what message you're trying to send me. It's just a whole fucking thing. And so I don't mind that they have a very political slant, but at the same time, it's like it's very, very obvious the kinds of stories you'll cover with a really big zeal and the kinds of things you'll try to brush under the rug. It lacks a certain level of journalistic integrity, but it has more than the stuff that's clearly just trying to get the damn clicks.
Yeah, because I mean, there's clearly like because that's one of those things where you look at the Mary Sue and it doesn't feel like a bias in the same way that like heavily slanted news organizations feel like a bias, because it doesn't necessarily feel like confirmation bias or anything like that. It feels like a group of people who feel very passionately about their media and they're writing about it in a way that reflects their personal beliefs. And I think that's fine. I think that is a way to have journalistic integrity as long as you're not misrepresenting facts. But yeah, I mean, yeah, what you said is totally fair.
Yeah. Okay, let's transition to the final like big piece of comic-related journalism, and that is things that cover comic book movie news. So one of the very first conversations I ever had with Steve Baxi was over Twitter, and he was complaining about movie sites just reporting rumors as fact. And so it just turned into a whole thing where anytime Steve said literally anything on Twitter for a day, I would misconstrue it in such a way and say that it is 100% confirmed that he would be playing Robin in the next Batman movie. So Steve would say something like, I can't stand the way that these movies are directed, and I'd be like, confirmed 100%, actor Steve Baxi playing Robin in next Batman movie having trouble with directors. And like it'd just be a whole fucking thing. And like that is exactly the level of work that is put into some of the way that these comic book movie sites report on things. The big stir up that I remember in recent years was related to the Wonder Woman movie. And it was literally not a guy, it was a guy that was a producer on Man of Steel and then completely left the rest of the DC EU projects. He had nothing to do with anything besides Man of Steel. And he was given an interview, and they asked him about the upcoming Wonder Woman movie, and he goes, yeah, I think that could be really interesting. I think they could maybe do something like with what we did with Man of Steel, where we had a Kryptonian race and that had come to Earth centuries ago, and like maybe, I don't know, they used their technology or something to create an all-female race, and that's how you get Wonder Woman and the Amazons with the superpowers. And that got reported as that was going to be her origin. It was a guy spitballing in the moment, in the interview, with what he thinks could be an interesting idea for a Wonder Woman origin. Terrible idea, but what he thinks could be an interesting idea for a Wonder Woman origin. And it got reported as, that was the origin of Wonder Woman in the DCEU. And everyone fucking lost their minds.
That's, fucking, like, sites like Inverse are so bad at doing that exact kind of like garbage, and I can't stand that. I can't stand where like we're gonna take this rumor and we're gonna like say like, oh my gosh, this is happening, guys, and like that's like a headline that you will see, and it'll say like, it'll be like, oh, you know, whatever, like I just pulled up Inverse. Here's an article. Marvel maybe revealed who Sylvester Stallone is in Guardians Volume 2, with the caption, he'll bring a truly bizarre character to life on screen. And I'm like, you just said maybe revealed. Now you're saying he will bring this character? Like, what? Like, Inverse is so full of this crap, and there's so many sites that just report these, like, casting rumors and crap like that, and it gets people all going, and people who know me on Facebook tag me in this crap because they're like, oh, what do you think about this? You read comics, don't you? And I'm like, stop sending me stupid crap.
Well, like, it's funny because there's a general rule in journalism, and that is any article that has this particular phrasing about it and ends with a question mark, the answer is always the same. And the phrasing is, does blah 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 have this in common? Question mark, or could this have happened? Question mark. And the answer is always no, or probably not. You don't have the sources, but you wanted to run the story anyway.
Exactly.
And it's just fucking ridiculous that there's no rigor put into it. It has no standards. It is entirely about clickbait, and that's ridiculous. Like, what is it? BatmanMovieNews.com. One of you fucks from season 3 got in trouble for this in Who Reviews the Reviewers. BatmanMovieNews.com does this shit all the time, where they will take fan speculation from forums and report it as news. Who got in trouble for that? And Alex called you on your bullshit.
That was Connor. Yeah.
That motherfucker. That fucking beta male cuck.
Well, all right. So couple of things. Ever since so Batman-News.com was something that I kind of gravitated towards in the production of Dark Knight Rises, and then after Dark Knight Rises, I didn't even really go to that site. And then when I was doing Who Reviews the Reviewers, and I was for that first round, I thought, I don't really go on too much websites, and every website I do go on is really huge and can't be covered in about 2 minutes, so I'll just do this Batman news thing that I remember liking back then. I'm so regretful that I did that, because that site sucks ballsack. Like, oh my god, it's bad. Have you been on there recently?
No, I've never.
Dude, I've never been on that
site.
I
avoid that site like the plague. No, I just remember how funny that was, because Cap's like, oh, this is a pretty good review, and Alex just comes in and is like, this site is total garbage. And Connor just said that they do a lot of rigor in their reporting. And I could imagine fucking Connor's face at the time being like, oh god, I'm gone, I'm not
No, that was my face.
I could totally imagine it. It was so funny how Alex just burned your ass on that one. Alex was supposed to be here tonight, because I know that Alex actually follows a lot of those sites and gets really annoyed with them, so it was unfortunate that couldn't make it.
Alex, if you're listening, you were right. I'm sorry.
Oh. 3 years too late, Connor.
I've been flogging myself 40 times a day for the last 2 years. So
that's
my back is a scab.
You fucking enjoyed it, you beta male cuck.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to say something real quick though, that I don't necessarily have a problem with fluffy top 15 lists. I don't think they're necessarily bad. They're fun to read and
they're my
talk
guilty
about.
pleasure of the world.
Yeah,
I like
they're
making
fun.
lists.
They're fun. There needs to be room for both. There's nothing wrong with a neat list of I was just scrolling through and I found top 15 police officer characters in comics, and I was like, see, that's a cool, I would read that and be like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
and they're fun discussion points.
Or with the movie news side of things, 15 actors that can play this character. Those are fun too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, dude, I remember when the DC subreddit did a massive poll for fan casting, and they picked top 3 actors for fucking every semi-major DC character. Shit was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah,
hold on, let me just
cool.
get this out before it becomes irrelevant. My pick for the Riddler will always be Hugh Laurie.
Yeah.
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 Can I unload on
No, you
fan
gotta hold your
speculation.
cum, you beta male cuck.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm holding it in. All right, so the I detest like people going like, should this actor play this character? And they'll have like a picture of the actor next to the picture of the character. Like, look, don't you see it? Like, I don't care. Like, you can get any good actor, dress them up, and tweak the design a little bit, and then, oh, look it, they look like X. Like, God, it drives me crazy. Like, sites do this all the time where they're like, Sophie Turner is Jean Grey. They'll have a picture of her next to a picture of Jean Grey. It's like, yeah, they both have red hair and pretty pale skin. So what? I don't care. What's, like... People go, wow, that was some pretty good casting. She looks just like Jean Grey. Yeah. So what? Who cares? Tom Hardy's Bane? I don't see it. All of a sudden, he's bald and he's jacked. You know, I see it now. Oh, screw you.
Heath Ledger as the Joker. All the
exactly.
Brokeback Batman jokes. All the Brokeback Batman jokes in the world.
I think Bane
recently,
should claim the Brokeback Batman jokes, but that's just me.
I think, what was it recently, Tom Holland was like, oh man, I think Jason Momoa should be Kraven the Hunter. I'm like, you're just fucking stirring the pot, kid. You are just asking for a bunch of goddamn clickbait articles with a bunch of photoshopped pictures of Jason Momoa on a goddamn, like, Kraven the Hunter cosplay, and I don't need that right now.
Can we just say that Photoshop is the enemy of journalistic integrity? Like, it drives me up a wall.
Yeah.
It does feel that.
I don't know, man. It's just a whole thing. Like, in journalism you have what's called hard news and soft news. Soft news is covering the parade downtown. Hard news is covering the fact that during the parade downtown there was some kind of, like, sneaky backroom dealing in City Hall. And unfortunately, it seems the vast majority of comic book journalism is related to soft news, fluff pieces, things just to get the clicks and the views, and that's bullshit. And unfortunately,
let's get some hard dick in on this comic book.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the only point in the industry's history where hard journalism could be a thing. Like, no one would read a newspaper article about Jack Kirby getting screwed out of thousands upon maybe even millions of dollars. But now people would actually read that, but we don't cover it. You know, you couldn't do this back then because the only people that let out any information about comic books were the comic book publishers.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the 90s and into today that you could start actually getting real journalism on comics. But for some reason, we just don't fucking do it because we don't think there's an audience there, which is bullshit. Just...
My God, where are my ethics in comics journalism? God damn it.
Yeah.
Fucking comic book gate up in here.
Mm-hmm. I will say,
I don't need to be.
The worst thing that has ever happened to journalism is attaching the word gate to everything.
Oh my gosh.
It's awful.
Yeah.
What can we say? The conservatives like putting gate on stuff.
That's what I'm actually surprised because like Gamergate was such a thing, and I'm surprised that we haven't had that for comics, considering that like there's a lot of overlap between people who are hardcore enough into video games to get into this whole debacle and people who are hardcore enough into comics to probably get swept up in a Gamergate-esque debacle.
It's just
so, like,
harder to do. It's just harder to get, like, the attention for. Because Gamergate, you could actually go and interrupt someone's gameplay, whereas in comics, I mean, you could protest a store, but not the same direct effect, right?
Yeah, but I also feel like having that there's not really that much of a polarized disconnect, at least politically, between readers and creators, because most people do sway left when it comes to comics.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I've seen people get annoyed with the fact that, like, comics seem to be really, like left in that there's no, conservative voice in comics, but at the same time, it's not 100% true across all art forms, but most art is to the left, and that's for a reason. It's because people truly consider what they're saying and thinking when they are expressing themselves through art. They are really sitting down and concentrating on it. And a lot of conservatism is, we don't need to think about it, it's just working.
Well, that's the thing with sorry.
Well, I don't want to insult conservatism, because I disagree with conservatism. I don't hate it or think it's stupid. I always get worried about projecting that image. But, like, just the very nature of conservatism is we don't need to change it. It's just working. So by conservatism's very nature, you shouldn't have to think about it. You shouldn't have to consider your options. And that's why when you get, like, these people that do the conservatism, like, podcasts and blogs and radio shows and stuff, it's always really, really, like, shallow thinking, a lot of fallacy arguments and stuff, because they're not truly considering their arguments. They're just making things.
It's usually, like, really kind of reactionary.
Yeah.
And just...
And so, like, there's that whole thing of it. And so why is art more to the left often than not is just because when you really think about your biases and considerations, you will more often than not realize the problems within the way you think. And that's where that shit comes from. But whatever.
And I mean, you look at like a lot of the really left-leaning comic book writers. Like you look at like your Mark Waid's, I guess. Mm-hmm. Why not? And then you compare that to like Chuck Dixon, who like anytime someone brings up the fact that Chuck Dixon is super conservative, well, comparatively, he'll be like, can't we keep politics out of it? And I'm like, and that's nothing against Chuck Dixon. He's a good writer. I'm excited for his Bane book. But like you notice that like a lot of the comic book writers of today who are pretty left-leaning, they're pretty active on social media, and they make no attempt to distance themselves from their political views. Mm-hmm. Whereas someone like Chuck Dixon, who tends to be a little bit more conservative and is therefore kind of an outlier in that industry, he's quick to say, why do we always got to make it about politics? At least as far as I've seen. And feel free to correct me if I'm a little off base there, but that's kind of the observation I've made.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I have no problem with there being a conservative voice in comics. I would like to hear that. I would like to see that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, like, just because you want to go find it doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's a good reason for you to try to get in the industry if you have those viewpoints. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, good luck.
It's hard to get into comics. Didn't used to be. Used to be like you were considered a bit of a failure if you got into comics, but now it's like something people strive towards, so you got that going for you.
And tying that back into journalism, I think a lot of times a lot of like reporters on sites like your IGN or your Comic Book News or comicbookwhatever.com, they'll play softball with the industry because a lot of those writers are aspiring to get into the industry.
Yeah, that's true. It's a real shame because I could have had, potentially, I could have asked at least an actual journalist to be on this show if we recorded this like next week or something, because we did that fan film, Rasco and I did that fan film review on These Are the Actors You're Looking For, and that's done by a guy who actually does, journalism for, I think it's just BBC, just does interviews and stuff for people, and it would have been interesting to get his perspective on this if he had any interest in coming on. Oh, well.
I think because we can only, it would be really interesting to hear the perspective of someone who works in the industry, and I've talked to people who do actually are trying to and do somewhat successfully make a living as like a small time video game journalist, and even hearing some of their stories, I'm sure some of the same kind of stuff applies to comic book journalism. And I don't know, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. And, like, I've worked at the news station for 2 years, and I saw, like, a different side of journalism that people don't normally see and stuff, and that helped inform a lot of my opinions on journalism. The fact that, you know, they don't do journalism, they don't teach journalism's a problem in and of itself. So I'm not surprised that a side branch of the entirety of journalism isn't very journalistically ethical, doesn't have much rigor to it, but I don't think that makes it okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, I went to school partially for broadcast media. I mean, I spent a lot of time in school working with the student-run news organization. I spent a little bit of time working as a PA with like an actual like news station. So I'm kind of right there with you. I have seen sort of the side where you kind of hear those conversations of producers talking to the reporters and the writers and hearing kind of what they emphasize over what you might think one should emphasize if you were trying to report the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yep.
So, yep,
and I did
I
paper in high school for a year.
You're so cute, Connor, you fucking little beta male cuck.
Aw, shucks.
Oh, you're gonna make them blush.
Yeah. No, get back in your corner and masturbate.
Okay.
But don't come. Anyway.
Okay.
I really hope that this gets to be like one of those really surprisingly popular conversations with Geeky Gentlemen, and like it gets hundreds of views of people just like hearing this really intellectual conversation about journalism, but every so often I just call Connor a beta male cuck and tell him not to come or something. I really hope that's what happens and people get really alienated by this video.
That'd be fantastic.
That would be ideal. Connor, masturbate more quietly.
Okay.
Okay. Well, shit, fuck, damn. I think we're at the end of this discussion. I'm pretty happy with where this went. I'm not entirely sure if we covered all the things Steve would have wanted us to cover, but Steve's not here because he's
I don't
dead.
think you could ever cover that many things.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm hoping Steve watches it and leaves a comment though. Okay, let's see here. Oh, what are we going to talk about next week? I need to announce a topic. You two are certainly welcome to come if you're free, but I don't know what we're going to be reviewing.
I thought Connor was not welcome to come. That was the impression I was under. What do we have here?
Well, I got something I'd like to hear a review on. But
I got something that fucking Ian and I need to review, and he knows what we need to review, and we're gonna do it eventually. He knows what I'm talking. What the fuck are you doing? Oh my god.
That's my dry laugh when someone makes a really bad pun. I do my dry laugh.
Oh, that was not really bad. That was some A-level shit.
What were you suggesting, Matt? What were we gonna review? Oh yeah, shit, that's right. Fuck it, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna review the 1997, 99 Sonic the Hedgehog anime film. Bam.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Sonic the Hedgehog.
You can't catch what you can't see, Sonic the Hedgehog. That was a song from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog TV show where Robotnik captured a folk songwriter and forced her to write folk songs about Robotnik, but instead she just wrote folk songs about Sonic.
Yep, that was a thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna be reviewing
place.
Sonic the Hedgehog, the anime film from the 90s. I think it's still on YouTube. Let me look that up real quick. Sonic.
It's either on YouTube or it's on some sketchy free website somewhere.
Yeah. Yep, 1999, 54 minutes long. It's really oddly timed. Oh shit, I forgot the way I was recording this conversation. Sorry for the random Sonic the Hedgehog music, listener.
I'm sorry for singing it. That was unprofessional of me. God.
Yeah, it's just hard to tell if it's in English or not. But yeah, it looks like it's on YouTube, full film. So hope you enjoyed that, folks that want to watch it. All right, yep, we'll review that next week. Matt will be back because he's that Matt kid, Anyway, everyone,
Woo!
thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Santa.
I guess I'm still the Sonic erotica lover. I haven't come up with anything better, so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, like, the situation in my mind right now is that Matt is fucking someone in a Sonic the Hedgehog costume, like a Sonic the Hedgehog furry, and Connor's in the corner masturbating but not allowed to come. That is the mental image I have right now. Is everyone cool with this mental image? Does everyone have a very clear mental image in their mind of this situation? Good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm part of it, so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I like to live on the edge, so.
Oh, God.
Until next time, we're your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.